Okay, year 12. You asked me to make you a screencast on an essay question. So here goes. It's going to be short and sweet and to the point, but it's a place to start. So the question I've picked is the past is never over. Is this argued in the memoir? And I think this is a really interesting question because it's something similar to what you could get on the exam. It's just short and sweet to the point. So the past is never over. So by the past, what do we think they mean? We're assuming that they're talking about the impact that the past has on the present, okay? In this case, the past is the Holocaust. So the impact that the Holocaust has is never over. And it doesn't specify who. It doesn't say, is this true for Artie or is this true for Vladek? It just says, is this argued in the memoir, which means that we have to assume that we need to talk about Artie and Vladek, if not other characters as well. So what are the key themes that come up in this question? And I wish I could do one of those fancy things Miss Brooks does where she puts the different boxes up, but I'm not that clever. So the key themes are survival, because part of the past is this whole idea that Vladek does survive. The past is never over because of guilt. All right, for both Art and Vladek, guilt factors in, okay? And of course, if we're going to talk about Art and Vladek and survival and guilt and the impact of the past, of course, we're going to have to talk about father-son relationships, because it's because of the past that Vladek can't understand Artie because of his experience as a survivor. And it's because of the past that Artie didn't experience because he didn't live through the Holocaust that he can't understand Vladek. Alright, so let's have a bit of a brainstorm. What are the key ideas? Well, we need to consider the emotional toll. So in this case, this is what we're talking about in terms of the past, first of all. What is the emotional toll of the past upon Artie and Vladek? Alright, but we know that that's just one aspect of this essay, because we know that the best mouse essays are going to talk about the themes and the ideas as well as the actual drawings. So here I've written, how is the past represented in the text? So how do the drawings or how does the graphic novel contribute to this idea? What does the graphic novel do in terms of past and present? And of course, that's the idea of allowing the 3 layers of narrative. You need to talk about the fact it's not only Vladek who suffers from the Holocaust. Of course, the Holocaust has ongoing ramifications for the entire Spiegelman family. You need to consider the notion of Art as a survivor as well. He's what we might call a second generation survivor, and you can find lots of literature online about the effect of the Holocaust upon the children of survivors, that they are called second generation survivors. Be very clear that Artie's suffering is not the same as Vladek's. They do both suffer, but it is different suffering. You can talk about the visual depiction of the past and present Vladek. Alright, what effect does the past have on Vladek? Alright, and then that relates to the next point. How is Artie drawn as a survivor? Think about the weight of the father's story. You can think about page 14 that we've talked about so often with Rudolph Valentino and the way he looks compared to that poster. How we made aware of Art's suffering. Of course, you've got to talk about the meta-narrative. You've got to talk about the drawings, the way he's drawn shrinking, his sessions with Favel and how he says he feels inadequate. When he discusses ideas with Francois, how I wish I had been in Auschwitz, all of that comes into this whole idea of the past continuing to impact Artie's present. And of course, just remember that we have to be able to talk about the visuals as well as the text and the themes. So the novel intertwines the past and present, and we'll call it a triple-tiered narrative. So we see the impact of the past on the present through the triple-tiered narrative structure, okay? Remember, when you are in a SAC or an exam, you need to write an intro that suits the question specifically on your SAC. So try and really hone in on what is being asked. So of course it's smart to have a plan, and it's smart to write a practice essay or 3 practice essays or 10 practice essays, but the best essays, the ones that score the highest, will directly answer the question. And I get lots of questions always about how you can do this. The best thing is to think really carefully about like what a question is asking you, and just to be familiar overall with the book, of course, but you can do this by focusing on the topic sentences. So how you word or reword a topic sentence. Remember that your topic sentence needs to encapsulate the main idea of a paragraph, but it also needs to show how it's relevant to what it's asking. In this case, how is your first paragraph going to relate to the whole idea of the past having the impact? With your quotes, quite often you can still use the same quotes. You don't have to reinvent the wheel entirely with every single essay, okay? You will see if you do enough work that the same examples come up time and time again. So I've put there like the example from page 13 to 18 when the past turns in on itself, and where they're talking about the selection process, and, you know, Valdec's explaining it to Artie. He says right, left, right. If I was trying to embed that into this essay, and that's the example I kind of knew and I'd practiced writing about, I might say something like, here readers see the past literally turn in upon itself, or here readers see the present becoming the past, something like that. So straight away the person reading your work can see the connection, can see that you're thinking about the essay question, okay, because that's what's really important, especially in exams. Of course, your linking sentence is your final opportunity to say, hey, this is my essay, this is my body paragraph 1 or 2 or 3, and this is how this body paragraph actually answers the essay question overall. This is how my ideas about Valdec being a survivor show the impact of the past. All right, so linking sentences are really important. So make sure you practice them in your own time. All right. So remember, we need to always write an intro. Intros are really important. By the time we get to exams, hopefully you will have some sort of basic intro that you can tweak each time worked out. I would strongly recommend having something like down pat that you can work out. So an intro, of course, needs to have an opening sentence, and an opening sentence is a sentence that sort of just frames the entire text. So it's a sentence that's about the novel or the text. In this case, I've said Art Spiegelman's graphic novel, The Complete Mouse, is based around the 1940s during World War II and the 1970s in New York. It follows the story of protagonist Valdec Spiegelman, a survivor of the Holocaust, and his son Artie Spiegelman, a writer and cartoonist. Remember, we want to use words like protagonist, okay? We want to really get good at using the meta language. All right, step 2 in an intro, reword the question. So remember, our question was, the past is never over, and I should really have that up the top of every page. The past is never over. So how can I say that in a different way? So I've talked about how their identities are influenced in the past, and I've also made sure that I mention the triple-tiered narrative. So I said, as Art interviews his father in Mouse, A Survivor's Tale, I've used the title, Book 1, it becomes apparent through the arrangement of the triple-tiered narrative, I don't need the that, it becomes apparent through the arrangement of the triple-tiered narrative that both Artie and Valdec's identities are influenced by the past. All right, don't know why I had an F in identities. All right, then what we all know how to do is to outline 3 arguments. Try and really think about making these clear. Like I said, an intro is the first impression. A well-written one means the world to an assessor. All right, so 3 arguments. In this case, I'm going to talk about Valdec for my first paragraph, and I've already thought about this before. I probably should have written it up the top, but when I was planning this, I wrote out just in like 1 or 2 words what each paragraph would be on, so I didn't forget. And I'd do that every single time. When I got into a SAC or an exam, I would quickly, like, as soon as I had my writing time, write myself out like a really quick plan, like the real basics of what I need to remember, just in case I get stuck. So paragraph 1 is Valdec. Paragraph 2 is Artie being a second generation survivor. And then paragraph 3, I thought we'd talk about like the graphic novel format and the triple tiered narrative and how we actually see the impact of the past through the drawings. Okay, I'm going to skip over these 3. You can read them hopefully on the screen, otherwise I'll share this with you. And then we finish an intro by answering or referring back to the question. So I've written suggesting, so linking up with the previous sentence, that both Vlodek and Artie's identities, I should have a comma there, as well as the foundations of their relationships are impacted by the past. So I'm saying that their identities and the way they relate with each other are impacted by the past, because of course when we talk about Artie, we talk about his inability to comprehend his father's story. Alright, paragraph 1, we're going to talk about Vlodek. So basically I need to write a topic sentence that says that Vlodek is a clear example of how the past becomes a burden. And I'm going to argue that he embodies the physical cost of the past, the physical cost of survival. So I said, despite Vlodek surviving the physical brutality of the attempted Jewish genocide, there is evidence that the dehumanizing experience of the Holocaust still haunt him throughout the graphic novel. So I've acknowledged Vlodek as a clear survivor, but I've said he is haunted by the past. But instead of just saying past again, I've tried to find a different way to say it. So I said dehumanizing experiences of the Holocaust. So what happened to him during the Holocaust? The past still affects Vlodek, okay? And once again, I forgot to copy my question, so I'm going to put it up at the top of my page. I really suggest you guys do this even in SACs. It just helps you stay focused. Okay, the past is never over. So what's the first example we can think of Vlodek and the impact of the Holocaust? Well, the one that comes to mind for me is the one that we've talked about in class with the whole idea of the sheik, and it's the quote is, "People always told me I looked just like Rudolph Valentino." It's a really clear-cut example, and we're just going to start with the examples that are clear-cut. If you've got other examples, or you can think of ones that aren't in the practice essays or that I haven't talked about in class, by all means try and work them into your essays. My job is just to kind of give you the basics, okay? But if you think that there's another quote or another example, please feel free to use it. So then I have to work that quote into a bit of a sentence. I've got to describe what's going on there. So I've called the frame narrative here the overarching storyline, because it is. It's the storyline that continues. So the overarching storyline of Mouse initially displays Vlodek as a dapper young ladies' man to whom, and then I've embedded our quote. Remember, we need to make it clear that our quote is part of a sentence. People always told me I look just like Rudolph Valentino. And then I've talked about the visuals. A famous American actor whose face is displayed on a large movie poster behind Art's now old, frail father riding an exocycle. So I've put my quote in there, but then I've also talked about the visuals, and that's what makes a really strong essay, is if we can do both of those things. Okay, I've elaborated on this, all right? I've said that there's a juxtaposition, and what does that juxtaposition do? It relays the impact, all right, the impact of the past on the present, okay? So I said he survives, but he is tarnished, okay? So again, I've said that we see the cost of the past on the present. Vlodek's Holocaust experience having an impact upon the present. All right, example 2. Turn to page 218 on your books.